Hello, my name is Laura Rupel, and welcome back to the Detours in Music podcast. This is episode 4 of season 4, featuring Ixi Chen, second clarinetist of the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and founder of Concert Nova and the Digital Clarinet Academy. I hope you enjoy.
My name is Ixi Chen. I am the second clarinet player at the Cincinnati Symphony and have been teaching as adjunct faculty at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music for the past 16 years. I also run a nonprofit, and it's a interdisciplinary collaborative chamber music ensemble called Concert Nova. Currently, my husband, Ted Nelson, who's a cellist in the Cincinnati Symphony, is producing all the concerts. But I'm still involved with the board and with communication and with some artistic directorship as well. But the most recent project that I've been immersed in is an online, it's a digital course and online content creation platform called Music 360. Which is the parent company for the Digital Clarinet Academy and the Digital Cello Academy. And we create programs like Audition Lab, a bass clarinet course, clarinet courses, resources, free resources and workshops, and just holding space for conversations about careers in music and what that looks like now, what it looks like for you personally, what options there are besides the two kind of big paths that people come into conservatory saying they want to do. Inevitably, the first question I'll ask and inevitably the first answers I'll get is, I want to play an orchestra. I want to teach. And there's never any other variation on that. So I really want to open students' eyes, people's eyes to that you and your unique path, you and your unique experiences and your skills and your gifts, you can really forge any path you would like. And if that includes playing an orchestra, great. If it includes playing chamber music, great. If it includes teaching, even better. But it doesn't have to be limited. So that's where a lot of my Hart projects are right now. They lie in the realm of the wellness sphere. Career, business, collaborations, how we can work together to create something new, and what it really means to be an artist citizen today.
How did you get your start in music?
I was born in Taiwan, and my parents moved to Chicago when I was 3 years old because they wanted to have more opportunities as with their growing family and give more opportunities to their children that they didn't feel like they were able to get. And so we didn't stay that long in Chicago. We ended up moving very quickly to California, where my mom was able to get an engineering degree, and that was sort of at the beginning of the growth of Silicon Valley and that whole tech boom. So although I think in her heart of heart, she was a poet. Like she was never really drawn to engineering, but she was good at it. She was smart. But in her spare time, she would dabble in photography. She would write poetry. She would paint. And so I think her real identity was a very artistic one. And so both my sister and I were enrolled in young ages in anything that they could find: karate, baton twirling, theater, music. So music was something that we always woke up to. My dad was always playing some Bach or some choral pieces or piano pieces, and so it was always this soundtrack going on in my household. And they would take us to symphony concerts, and then when I was 5, they said, "Okay, you're gonna take piano lessons." And I took a few years of it. It was fun, but I felt like it was kind of lonely, and I wanted to have an instrument where I could play with other people. So I begged my mom, could I take something else? And she said, how about flute or clarinet or a woodwind? She was really like enamored of the woodwinds. And so the deal was that I had to continue with piano and I could start clarinet. And clarinet was sort of the key to my freedom a little bit. Like I would be able to play in this youth orchestra and go on this tour. And it was the way that I found exploration and adventure growing up.
Yeah.
So it was something that I think I probably realized I wanted to do around junior year when I went off to the Chautauqua Music Festival. And then later did a few other festivals. But then in college, I think my parents were very like, okay, if you want to do music, it's a really hard path. The future's unclear. If you're willing to kind of not know what jobs are going to be waiting for you, yeah, sure, we'll support you, but you can't go to a conservatory. You have to go to a university where you can actually have, if you decide one day music's not for you, hint, hint, you could always just shift into something else. But I was able to get a music scholarship, and I started off at UCLA. I auditioned for conservatories too, but my parents' big rule, their steadfast rule was I had to go to a university. And then, of course, sophomore year, I decided to audition to transfer. Not that UCLA wasn't great. I had a wonderful teacher there named Gary Gray who just passed. He's wonderful and instilled in me a lot of the really superb foundational studies on clarinet. But he said, yeah, go off, go to New York, go to wherever. And you do need to be immersed in music for some time. Whether it's in a conservatory or not, but it seems like you want to be in a conservatory. So let's try it. And I auditioned and got in to music schools. And I was like, okay, my parents said, okay, I guess you're serious about it. Let's do it. Work hard. Go for it. So I moved to New York. It wasn't like a day when I realized I wanted to go into music. It was this whole process of, I think what I really loved about it was discovering myself. And yeah, I could probably pinpoint times, I could remember very clearly when it was so that experience was so magical. Like listening to Sibelius, really, really getting to know the music of Sibelius was huge. Going to a youth orchestra concert and seeing people play in harmony and all the voices coming in and out. And I think the piece was New World Symphony. And of course, that's like low-hanging fruit, right? That's beautiful. But I think what really spoke to me was that like all these different voices are coming and working together in this incredible way of here, this is when you come in, and this is when your voice is important, and this is when the blend is really what's the key to this passage. So I think that, and just being able to see the world.
When you did that transition from your undergrad at UCLA to moving to New York, was that kind of a big confidence boost, or was that something you struggled with in deciding that you were really going to go for it?
It was definitely a struggle. I think I knew I wanted to go for it. I didn't know if I'd made the right decision moving to New York. So big.
Yeah.
Felt so lost going from a small music program at UCLA where I was a freshman, I was playing principal on things, to going to, well, I don't know if this teacher, is this the right choice? I had a hard decision to make, and I had said yes to all the schools because I didn't know. I felt like an outsider to the music world. My parents were not born in the country. They didn't know anybody. They didn't know how this industry worked. And that's what fuels me a lot today too, is not everyone is privy to who the teacher, or even the knowledge of who they should be studying with, or what kind of teacher they should be. I didn't know I had to go and take lessons, trial lessons. That wasn't something that crossed my mind, or that my parents thought of. And in the end, I had to make a blind choice. And fortunately, people crossed my paths at the right time. I was very lucky. I felt that anytime I sort of needed some insight, someone would show up in my life. So I had met Yehuda Gilad when I was in LA, and I knew I wanted to study with him at some point. And when I auditioned for him, his studio was full, but later I was able to return and do my master's with him.
Mm.
And earlier he was saying, okay, well, here's what I would suggest. And like people like Yehuda or Ricardo Morales, who somehow I ended up on the same street corner after my audition at Manhattan School. And I just asked him what his advice would be. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
don't go into debt for music school. Don't go into debt. And so go to the school that gives you the most money. You're going to be fine. Yeah, teachers are important, of course, and all the schools you applied to have great teachers. So you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be okay, but just don't go into debt. So I kind of, held on to that. And I ended up going to the school that gave me the most money in the end, even though,
Yeah.
yes, yes, I'm coming. Um, so I ended up going to Manhattan School of Music. And it was great because I got to work with David Krakauer, who was my main teacher there, but also was able to play a little bit with the orchestral performance program, which
Mm.
Ricardo Morales was the head clarinet teacher of. Um, so that was a struggle. One, going from California to New York, two, kind of jumping into this it was a pond to this huge ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and navigating that and having to get a job and like figuring out when I could practice the work-life balance thing, um, the being brave about playing in this really amazing orchestra at
Yeah.
school, the recitals, everything was just so much faster.
What is some advice that you would give yourself in that situation that you give to students today?
That's a great question. Um, if I were to go, if I had a student who transferred to New York, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, oh my gosh, this is so much, I would say go to a lot of live concerts.
Mm.
You're there to work for sure, but take advantage of hearing people and
Mm-hmm.
learning about people and seeing people perform live. And I sort of did that by accident. I got a job with the New York Philharmonic doing telemarketing, but then I got
Mm-hmm.
tickets.
Yes.
So I got 2 tickets a week, and the seats were right above the orchestra. And later on, I realized how much I learned just observing
Mm-hmm.
people when they came on stage, how they warmed up, what did they warm up on, and what did they warm up on the first night, and what did they warm up with on the second night.
Hmm.
So just kind of absorbing what that professional um, path is when you're about to perform and when you're performing. Like, when do they put their instrument up? Do they fiddle around a lot with their equipment before they
Mm-hmm.
play, or are they quiet and focused?
It definitely ignites inspiration in me every week seeing the Cincinnati Symphony.
Yeah, for sure. I call it the North Star,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the moment where you're like, oh, that's where I'm guided.
Yes.
That's where what I want to be like. I didn't know it could sound like that,
Mm-hmm.
and now I do. How do I make that happen?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just fueling this burning desire. And you can, I mean, there were times, of course, when you're struggling, you're thinking, gosh, should I just go back home?
Mm.
What am I doing here? All these questions like, am I ever going to be good enough? Am I wasting money paying this tuition, living in the city? But you have to, I think, sometimes know when to listen and know when that's just sort of like um, what Seth Godin calls taking yourself off the hook,
Mm.
taking yourself off, going through the necessary um, self-doubt, the necessary periods of frustration,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to just keep moving forward. Um, so knowing how to be clear about what you about the bigger picture, getting that perspective from a bird's eye view of, you know, and that doesn't come easily. You have to talk to mentors, you have to find people who've been through it. But having that clarity to be able to say, okay, right now I'm in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
How, you know, I don't, maybe I just, you know what, I'm going to try to stub in or buy standing room only tickets to whatever it is. Like you could choose. For me, it was like when the Vienna Philharmonic came, that was huge. Or going to the opera, that was huge. Going to the New York Philharmonic was something I had more experience with. But, you know, seeing the Emerson String Quartet play or Concertgebouw coming and just taking yourself out of your little world of um, like mental conflict, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just confined to undergrad, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. There's always these like, okay, well, you know, I went back to USC, went back to LA, started my master's at USC,
Okay.
and faced the same things. Like, okay, wow, everyone's really great in this studio. They've actually taken auditions before, and I've never taken one before in my life. How am I ever going to catch up? Do I need to be where they are right now?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this whole thing of comparison. And now that I've started to see what the music world looks like, do I think I'm going to make it? Am I am I ever going to be at the level of being able to make it?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of those inner thoughts of, yeah, do I have anything to say? But you know, my teacher there, of all the great qualities he had, um, he had us think about our inner still voice,
Mm.
which is not able to be duplicated by anybody else. And I think at the point of doing your master's, that's when you're thinking, okay, what will really happen?
Mm-hmm.
What's 2 years time or in 1 year's time? It's such a short amount of time that you're really faced with the cold hard, like, what am I going to do for a job when I
Yes.
graduate?
In your master's, were you thinking by the end of this, I want to be taking orchestral auditions?
When I was in my master's, the first semester, um, I just wanted to see vast improvement quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And in every lesson, in every lesson, I was like, this is my problem. Help me.
Mm-hmm.
I was very like, and to the point where Yehuda would say, what's your crisis today? So I think I had this um, big expectation of myself that I had to see improvement
Mm-hmm.
quickly. And so I remember, so I ended up actually moving to Germany at the end of the first semester because I got a position, I guess. It wasn't like here's a contract. It's like, hey, come tour with our orchestra. And it
Cool.
was this German orchestra who had sent people around the world to do auditions. And I had a performance in the morning. It was an outreach performance. My teacher was conducting. I performed a concerto, and it didn't go very well. And I was really upset. And I had a lesson, and I was upset. And he said, "Okay, go take this audition, and we'll talk some more." And I was so like worked up that I think I went in the audition and didn't care
Mm-hmm.
and just played. You know, like I wasn't careful about anything. I just was like, I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play this excerpt. I'm gonna play this solo. And so there was some, you know, I had clearly had some intensity there.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting offered a spot. And 1 month, you know, they said, "Oh, come tour with us for 1 month," and got flown out to Cologne, Germany, and
Wow.
there's a couple other Americans in our group from LA, and we're like, "Wow, what a great adventure!" And 1 month turned into 2 years,
Wow.
and
Awesome.
it was had to learn German. Um, I got an apartment there. I started taking lessons at the Karlsruhe Hochschule for Music with Wolfgang Mayer, which is amazing. This is another big piece of advice I would give to people is travel. Go to
Mm.
Europe, go away from the United States for at least 6 months or a year and just absorb the musical life and the culture somewhere
Mm.
else. He was wonderful. I feel like just performing day in and day out, sometimes he would change, our director there would change the program on a whim, and we'd have to play a completely different program. So just being on your toes, and we did recording projects. Um, and then after 2 years, I said, okay, I'm going to go back to the United States and get a job.
Hmm.
It's time to settle down and get a job. Um, so yeah, it was sort of the surprise in the middle of my master's, um, to have this opportunity, and I took it and came back feeling like all that experience could translate into
Yeah.
something.
When you came back, I guess, what was that process of getting your job in the Cincinnati Symphony, or what transpired between those things?
Hmm. Okay, I was very lucky. As I started back in my master's, um, I not only got a lot of performance experience, but there were auditions almost every month.
Mm.
So there were auditions there almost every month. So I was able to like go out and have an experience, learn from it, and then apply my learning.
Hmm.
I didn't have to wait 6 months or a year to apply
Yeah.
my learning. So I feel like I was developing, um, the observer, which I try to have my students do. So it's not the critic, it's just an observer.
Mm.
Like, what happens when I get nervous? And you're not pushing it away. You're not trying to change it. You're not like getting upset about it. You're just observing. Oh, actually, you know what? My left hand likes to tense up and my left pinky likes to tense up when I'm nervous.
Mm.
Or I stop using my air fully. Or this happens. Or in this excerpt, this throws me a curve. So you're just observing. And then after the audition, I'm like, I know exactly what I need to do.
Hmm.
If I were to play this again immediately, this is what I would do differently. I wasn't going to go back. I mean, yeah, I was going to talk to my teacher about it, but I had the knowing,
Yeah.
not just the like a belief, but a knowing of what I need to do differently,
Mm.
how to voice something or how to take chances. So having that was amazing. Um, the other thing that was really great, which I recently wrote about, was my roommates. Um, my lease was coming up on this house I was renting. I was bummed, but I looked in Craigslist. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm living in South Pasadena. I want to live by the ocean.
Hmm.
So I was looking at Craigslist and found this place, and I went and met the two girls who were living there. They're looking for a third roommate, and I ended up living with them for 2 years as I finished my master's, and they were doing a medical degree. And what I was trying to tell people in this article that I wrote was your environment has so much to do with your mindset, your attitude, your work ethic. And they were fun, they were smart, they worked hard, but they also played hard. And
Hmm.
so just this atmosphere of highly motivated, productive,
Hmm.
fun people
Hmm.
really helped me when I was going out to take auditions. Like not only would they come to my performances, they'd be like, "Okay, you got this. Go kick ass in
Yeah.
the audition." And it was amazing, and I knew how to practice, started figuring out like, okay, what's really important about practicing for auditions. It's not just practicing, it's practicing performing.
Hmm.
And that was the big thing at that point. Driving everywhere to teach, that was something. Driving like 2 or 3 hours for gigs, I was like, oh my gosh, I only have, you know 90 minutes to practice today, or I only have an hour to practice today. How am I gonna get it all in and be able to do this job and
Hmm.
drive there? So learning how to really hone in on what was really important to practice was
Hmm.
huge at that point. And I got to do it every month almost. So quickly, I started to advance in auditions. And then I was able to get this 1 year position in Cincinnati, which then turned into I was able to start in the finals for the national audition. And I've been here ever since. I
Yeah.
feel really lucky. It's a great orchestra. It's a great city to live in. I'm raising a family here now. Where's my heart? I think it's in Cincinnati.
Taking auditions for first and taking auditions for second is kind of a whole different mindset for clarinet. Is it that same way?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, in Europe, I learned that French horn players or woodwinds in general
Hmm.
would actually define themselves.
Yeah.
Are you a low horn? Are you a high horn? Are you a second? Not
Hmm.
just are you low and high like we have here, but um, your temperament is more of a second player,
Hmm.
or your the qualities, your personal qualities are more of a second player. And yeah, I absolutely gravitated towards being a platform for somebody,
Hmm.
support, offering that support. Not in a I'm going to follow you and do everything you do kind of way,
Yeah.
but like, hey, here's a good idea. I'm just going to kind of nudge this idea over.
Hmm.
You take it, Like I'm very receptive and also I'm not afraid to communicate too. So
Hmm.
I think that's a really good combination when you're playing second. And if you're studying, if you feel like you have those qualities, yeah, for sure, go for the second positions and the
Hmm.
second auditions. It is a different way of hearing. You're listening across down the row
Mm.
while also listening here, while also listening behind and getting the grounding with intonation because sometimes
Yeah.
you're providing that root or your voice is important to how everyone else stacks up on top of you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When did doing all of these kind of passion projects or side things start incorporating themselves into your life?
Oh, I think um always
Yeah.
when I was a freshman, at UCLA, I remember thinking, I love studying music, but this can't be all.
Yeah.
Like I don't if I just practiced, if I just immersed myself in music, I would go crazy.
Hmm.
So not only did I take other classes, I pushed myself in that like the vertical of that. Let's say it was math.
Hmm.
Like, okay, my dad was like, okay, if you were to stop music, what would you do? Like, okay, I think architecture. So not only did I take math, I took calculus for architects. So I didn't want some soup down calculus.
Yeah.
I wanted the real, like, this is what architects are good at. This is a calculus for, those people. I
Hmm.
want to do that. um, so I was a big believer in the fact that anything you learn in life can be applied to your music and it could
Hmm.
be applied to what you have to offer through what you're trying to communicate. Um, so with that in mind, I was always interested and took classes. When I first landed here in Cincinnati, I signed up for darkroom classes at the Art
Oh, yeah.
Academy.
Okay.
And every Saturday morning, I would spend like 9 a.m. to 2 in the darkroom. And that was my way of, I think it was a good balance to music making, which I see as taking something concrete, making it fleeting.
Mm.
And photography is like taking something fleeting and making it concrete. And so
Hmm.
work with this moment in time I captured and learn how to, use the chemicals to make it look like what I was seeing at
Hmm.
the time. So there's that. I joined all sorts of like the Give Back Cincinnati group. I met people from the international club that would always meet on Fridays, and through that, I've always loved chamber music, but through meeting people who worked at Toyota, who worked at P&G, who worked for Amazon, whoever, they would
Hmm.
always say, "Oh, you work for the symphony? That is amazing!" And I'm like, "Do you come when you come?" And they're like, we don't come."
Hmm.
It's not really. I mean, it's not really for me. Sitting there so still. I don't know, I feel like I'm too restless, or I don't know, I feel like I need to get dressed up, or I feel like it's too over my head. And so I started thinking about how I could also do something that would get them excited about chamber music or excited about classical music. And that's how Concert Nova was born,
Mm.
both from having friends like that and also seeing that there was it felt like a disconnect between the performers on the stage and the audience.
Yeah.
And so and I did this like year long, I would ask everybody, I'd give them this survey, like, what would be interesting for you? Would this be interesting for you? If we did something like this, would that be more interesting? So it was like trying to find a way to bring the program notes to life
Mm.
somehow with actors, with chefs, with scientists, with people who could give a modern context for old music, or even have a point of entry for new music.
Mm-hmm.
But they need something like relevant to hang on to. So like, oh, okay, this music is about this. I understand now.
Mm-hmm.
For example, there was this, we wanted to do Histoire du Soldat. And I was looking through all the different scripts there were, and I liked them all. But I eventually reached out to a CCM acting teacher, a dramaturg named Michael Burnham, who together we decided, okay, we're going to do a new modern version of Histoire du Soldat that talks about post-traumatic stress disorder. So the soldier has PTSD. His violin represents this disease.
Mm.
And there's a princess in the original story that doesn't talk, doesn't have a speaking role. We gave her the spotlight. So she was telling the story and seeing him struggle with this disease. And in the end, her experience of him selling his soul, or in this case, committing suicide. And so I think people were able to have a different experience of this classic timeless story.
Yeah.
And that's what it all boiled down to, was how do you communicate something that was written so long ago
Mm-hmm.
in a way. I mean, it's not like you're using words all the time in music, but what are some ways that you can illuminate what the music is about?
Yeah. I think what you're doing is kind of what the greater world of music is really trying to do. And I appreciate that in Cincinnati, we have these resources of musicians on stage realizing that it's about more than just playing the right notes. It's about, do the people in the audience care about what we're doing? Do the people who didn't come, like, should they care? Would they care if we made it more interesting?
I think it's so necessary, and
Mm-hmm.
I think young musicians of today should feel free to not only um, come up with their own ideas, but I feel like they need to be equipped with the skills
Mm-hmm.
to create it. The skills, the knowledge, and the confidence
Yeah.
to create. I think that should be part of everyone's education.
Yeah, I agree. Your work with the online academies, did that start kind of out of the pandemic, or was that something that initiated before?
You know, the pandemic and the lockdown actually gave space for it to happen.
Yeah.
The ideas, I think, came from wanting to, feeling like there's not enough time in a lesson.
Mm.
So I've taught from fourth grade to 80-year-olds, and I still have an 80-year-old. I think my youngest now is a junior in high school. But teaching at the collegiate level, there's always something coming up.
Mm-hmm.
There's ensemble music to be learned. Aside from, here are the fundamentals I want you to work on, and we're going to check in. We're not going to have a lot of time necessarily to do everything, every lesson. But here's what I'd like you to do. Here's the template of things I'd like you to be working on. Just getting through like one excerpt for if they want to take an audition, I feel like takes up the whole time.
Yeah.
So there's no time. And I'll be saying things like, oh, can you think of this phrase like a dancer would? And be like, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, go watch this video. But there's not the time to get really deep into something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted one to create a bank of videos
Mm-hmm.
that they could refer to. It's like a library.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what did he say? How did that warm up go? And I could just like explain it and demonstrate it, and it'd be like a 10-minute video.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be taking precious lesson time teaching it again, even though, yeah, of course they can bring it in,
Mm-hmm.
and they can say, oh, I have these questions, of course. But concurrent to that, I've been teaching a lot of one-off, like perspective lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a string of people who came that really got me thinking, going back to the fact that I felt like an outsider. In high school, I didn't know anything about the music industry, didn't know
Mm-hmm.
who was who. These people came in, they were young, they were auditioning for colleges. And I would say, what's your lesson history? Who'd you study with? And a couple of people would say, well, my parents weren't supportive, or I lived 2 hours away from the nearest big city. I couldn't get there, or it was too expensive for me. And so I only had these 8 lessons in my sophomore year. And then I had, a handful of lessons, and I feel behind. I love music. I don't feel like I know enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was also born out of the desire to help these people.
Mm-hmm.
So accessibility, um, and also just to have something where I could create more space in lessons. So that's where the ideas of this online platform came from. And that was back in, I think my first notes I wrote about probably happened in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But when we finally got locked down, it was right after I took a class. So I signed up for a digital course on how to make digital courses
Yeah.
um, back in 2019 in the fall. And so I took that. I was like, okay, I have to find a way to do this. And lo and behold, everything shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I started writing scripts. I spent all day writing scripts. And then I figured out how to videotape myself. And
Mm-hmm.
we had purchased some cameras to do Concert Nova live streaming. And I tried that. But in the end, I just used my phone. And I learned how to use Adobe Premiere Pro. I learned how to make graphics. I learned how to edit and cut in things and slides and worksheets. And I got halfway through this like 12-week introductory foundational thing for clarinet when a friend said, did you know that all the festivals are going to be shutting down this summer? You have this platform, you should offer something.
Mm-hmm.
So I pivoted and I was like, okay, the course is going to stay here. I'm going to do the summer thing. And that sort of really working with live people, not just
Mm-hmm.
like an idea in my head, but working with live people, hearing what they needed, hearing where they're struggling, hearing that they all want help with articulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a magic word. You say articulation and people are like, what? Um, was really eye-opening. And I learned a lot I did 3 sessions of it. And I think that's what gave momentum to the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've always wanted to help people holistically. So concurrent to Digital Clarinet Academy, I started a membership, which is a monthly, or I think people can pay session wise, like a winter session or summer session. And we bring people in to talk about, how to create a diverse program, how to think about your career, what kind of skills you need, what kind of, everything that you can imagine.
Yeah.
We wrote down these topics, and that's the 360 of who you need to be
Mm.
to feel like um, you have what it takes to create your own career.
Mm-hmm.
So the balance between those two platforms right now, I have a great partner who I met. I invited her to teach at the very first summer festival. And we hit it off and we work very well together. And we're like, oh, you have this idea? What about and this? How about we add this? And so it became a very good working relationship. We're like 4 courses and almost 2 years, a year and a half down the road,
Yeah.
and it's going strong. So I'm really happy with that work. Um, I want to bring it into, I want to see if I can bring it into my teaching, my live teaching
Hmm.
as well. So we'll see.
How are you able to balance all of these things and still play in the Cincinnati Symphony every week?
That's really another good question. One, being able to manage time,
Hmm.
right? So we talk about that a lot because sometimes I will just allow myself to go down whatever rabbit hole. I'm like, oh, you know what? Today is not gonna be a day where I'm lining things up.
Hmm.
Um, Other days I set my focus timer and I'm like, you're not gonna perfect this. You're just gonna get it started.
Hmm.
You're gonna move into messy action. So my timer goes for 25 minutes and then I have a 5 minute break where I really try to disengage and give my eyes a rest or, you know, put down the clarinet. So
Hmm.
everything, I love working in these blocks because one, I'm not losing track of time.
Hmm.
And two, I know I have a finite amount of time. So
Hmm.
I'm not going to get distracted. I'm not going to, like, oh, if I get stuck on a word, I'm not going to obsess about it.
Hmm.
I'm stuck on something. And also, when you're practicing, you want to be able to you want to move on
Hmm.
and come back. You don't
Hmm.
want to just like work on something for 60 minutes because that's not how you're going to play it anyway. You're not going to have 60 minutes to work on it and then perform it. You're going to perform it first
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
So having these smaller blocks, I'm able to chunk the passages I'm working on and then come back and interweave it a little bit so it's not A
Hmm.
and not just B B B B B B B, but it's A B C A B C A B A B or B C B C. Um, and I find that that's a lot more useful
Hmm.
and much more productive and efficient. Um, so that's how I learn my symphony music. I know how much energy and intensity something takes,
Hmm.
so I can sort of plan the week, and then I trade off different jobs with my partner in 360, doing work, and we know when our launches are. We plan further ahead. I know when my lessons are.
Hmm.
The only thing that throws me a curveball is my children's schedules because
Yeah.
sometimes I don't get that, and sometimes we're like, oh wait, at 5 o'clock we have to be where.
Hmm.
So it's sort of this juggle, and there's often plates on the ground. Not every plate needs to stay spinning all the time. And
Yes.
yeah, I think in the future, I don't think it's sustainable, probably.
Hmm.
I think either we hire help in or put something down.
Hmm.
Like Concert Nova is not fully run by me anymore. And I mean, after 15 years, it was hard to be
Hmm.
like, okay, I trust you. So trusting someone else to take the reins, trusting their decisions, knowing that it's in good hands. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah.
And like getting enough sleep.
Yeah. That is important. I think it's also good for people to hear from a teacher and from a performer who's doing so much that sleep is important or letting some plates fall is important and okay, because I know we can look to our kind of idols and think, oh, they just do everything right all the time. They're never stressed.
Hmm.
Nothing ever happens. But of course, that's not the case.
Oh, and for sure, like saying no to things, even to like saying no to myself
Hmm.
times. Like, no, you don't have to make that perfect.
Hmm.
No, that doesn't need to be done right now.
Hmm.
It's more important to, I don't know, watch a show with my son or just close the laptop. So detour moments, I feel like that's where I've often found, because it's easy to say now that
Hmm.
this entrepreneurship stuff has been there, but
Hmm.
in the beginning it
Hmm.
wasn't. that was very much a detour.
Yes, yeah.
Like if you just like were to drop the needle in my life 17 years ago, let's say. This was, 3 or 4 years into playing here. And you would have seen me doing, the give back stuff and the darkroom photography and doing headshots for people and playing and teaching. And so back then, thinking about doing a chamber music was very much like a creative detour. Like, okay, I need to keep invigorating my relationship with classical music. Keep exploring all the repertoire that's out there. It's not just going to be Mahler, Strauss, and Pops the rest of my life, right? I want to deepen my relationship with music. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to go over here for a while. And it absolutely, was something that helped my playing. Teaching was something that absolutely helped my playing and the career in the orchestra. So I think that could take many different, it could look like anything. I mean, it could be working in social media for a while. It could look like taking a sabbatical and writing a book. It might even mean like I have a friend in the orchestra who wrote a book. I had a friend in the orchestra who created a rock album. Enrolling in a lot of the courses I did was a detour. I want to learn. I want to write better. I'm like, I'm going to write better. Like, I'm just going to write. I took a copywriting course. So just not being afraid to be bad at something.
Yeah.
Jumping in, walking another path. I think that's all really healthy and essential for life work.
Yeah. It seems like you're always encouraging yourself and your students to explore new things. And something you said early on was that you think all of those things you can bring back to your music, which I think makes a lot of sense and is important for us to know that doing something that's distracting or something you can reframe it as, no, this is something I can bring back to the music.
Yeah, it's all part of you. It's all like spokes of the same wheel.
What are some of your current goals for all of these things?
I want to create immersive experiences for people. This is my big, and I'm going to tell you because it's time to say it out loud. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I want to create like a retreat center.
Okay.
And I feel like there's not enough time, right? In one lesson, like you do a lesson a week. It's just not enough time. I want to work with someone for 6 hours a day for 7 days or 5 days or whatever. And really get into the work. Whether it's helping create a collaboration, like this project that they've had for a long time. Whether it's there's somebody who came recently who said, I want to create a digital course from my book. I don't know how to do that. I'm like, okay, let's work on it. But it can't look like an hour a week. It would take forever. And so I don't know how this will come about. I don't know what it'll look like at first, but I know I envision this, very peaceful location. Maybe a group of people can work together at the same time. But it's like there's no distractions. You're eating well, you're sleeping well, you're feeling calm, you're supported, and we're just having ideas. We're creating things. Okay, maybe today we're going to write copy for the website. Tomorrow we're going to break down the book into 5 or 6 minute segments that you can record. Or, you want to create a chamber music program. So who would you talk to about that? Here's your action steps. So going from idea to action steps to, okay, what can we get done now? but that is like, that's my dream. I want to help people. I want to empower people to
Mm-hmm.
not only like have an iteration of their dreams, but
Mm-hmm.
to follow through and not give up hope, and to help them with tools and to give
Mm-hmm.
resources, and to say, okay, you can do that, but or you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a better way to do it, or here's a faster way, or here is how. I mean, it could just be, let me help you with your cover letter,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, so that's really where my attention is going, and where I'm spending a lot of time like dreaming.
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of a
yeah.
space for action, it seems. Yeah.
I think having a platform like yours
Mm-hmm.
is, you can go in any direction. Positioning yourself as somebody who is curious, who
Mm-hmm.
asks questions, who isn't afraid to enter into these places of real talk.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can go in any direction you want.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Ixi Chen and was reminded in my own life and own experiences to not find my other passions or other interests as deterrents for my music making, but to remember, like she said, that they're all spokes on the same wheel, and anything that I'm interested in can help something else I'm interested in. And my music making is made better because of being a more well rounded person. As always, thank you for listening, and feel free to keep up with the podcast on social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks.